What's something your family raised you doing that you later learned was really weird? Before we start with the first story, please hit a subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. Not me, but a friend from years ago. Their family never said "I love you" to one another. We were in our late teens, early 20s. They mentioned they'd only heard it a handful of times. My family says it liberally. I remember hugging them before they moved out of state, saying "I love you" and pull away to see them crying. Story 2. Before I was totally competent swimming by myself, my mom would put a life jacket on me, tie a long piece of nylon rope to it, and chuck me in the river. She'd basically swim me on a leash down the river for fun. Mom, you are the classiest redneck. Story 3. Not cleaning. My mom didn't know how to clean and so couldn't really teach us either. We had this fungus growing out of the carpet at one house that looked like cooked lasagna noodles. We would just kick it out of the way when it sprouted up, or my mom would buy a new rug and put it on top of the old rug. Especially if the old rug was stuck to the floor from filth or something. I didn't think anything of it and would have friends over who probably talked all kinds of shit about me afterwards. But they kept coming over anyways, so I guess they weren't that turned off. Story 4. Catholic mother, Muslim dad, neither really practicing. We celebrated Christmas though, and on Christmas Eve night, instead of doing the normal Christmas stuff like cookies, milk, etc., my dad would loudly pretend to violently chase Santa out of the house by yelling and cussing him out and throwing his shoe at him, which we would later find in places like the fireplace. Story 5. Using a ship's bell to call for dinner. My parents got tired of yelling for us, so they mounted a ship's bell to the hallway wall. They would ring it for dinner and any other occasion when they needed our attention. Like Pavlov's dog, I get hungry whenever I hear a ship's bell ring. Story 6. Having your teen partners just move in. My brothers both had their girlfriends move in with us when they were 14 and 15, due to their home life being rough. When I was 14, my boyfriend of 3 months got kicked out, so he moved in with us, no questions asked, for 2 years. Several of our friends also just moved in with us. Story 7. If I had friends over, my mom wouldn't allow me to offer them anything to eat, nor anything to drink except bottled water. They also weren't allowed to use the upstairs washroom. They had to use the tiny one in the basement. They also weren't allowed to sit on any of the couches, and half the time, not even on the chairs. Fairly certain my mom was trying to make visits by friends as unwelcoming as possible so they wouldn't visit, and ditch me as a friend. She thought that all that mattered was studying and getting good grades, and she was more than willing to sacrifice my social life happiness to ensure that I got good grades. Story 8. We were not allowed to have a drink with our meals. It could be the driest food ever, or you could be thirsty as all hell. Nope, no water, finish the meal first. Bathing, showering only on Saturday evenings. I must have smelled so bad back then, especially since my dad smoked in the house. It was to save money on the water bill, but a pack of cigarettes a day was in the budget. Story 9. Whenever it was one of our birthdays, my father made us keep a pen and pad next to the phone to list everyone who called and when. He'd then keep a blacklist of everyone who didn't call, or didn't call in a timely fashion. For example, the closer you were related, the earlier in the day you should call under his rules. I didn't realize this was messed up until I was an adult and had a lot of therapy. Story 10. Not cleaning our bathtubs. In the 18 years I spent living with my parents, I probably cleaned my bathtub 3 times. We just considered it normal for it to be moldy and dirty. At least that's how I saw it, because my parents just never talked about it. When I was a teenager, my mom started giving me tasks to do around the house. I would sweep and mop the floors. I would clean the surfaces. I would clean the toilets and sinks. But the bathtubs were never mentioned. They were just never in my radar as something I needed to clean, and my parents never said otherwise. It was when I moved out and lived with roommates, and eventually romantic partners, that I realized this wasn't normal. Now I gag when I visit my parents and I have to take a shower in those disgusting bathtubs. Story 11. When I became an adult, I was shocked to find out that other families did things with their kids. My mom was a shopper. My dad golfed and played cards at the club. We never had any family activities like hiking, camping, bowling or anything in the 60s and 70s. When I had things my parents could have come to watch, they never did. My daughter was a good tennis player, and I spent every afternoon and all weekends with her playing. She did get a full ride tennis scholarship in Hawaii for college. I don't think I had one real conversation with my dad. When he was dying, I asked him if he could tell me he was proud of me. He said, "I'll think about it. That F's you up for life." Story 12. Whistling for each other. My mom didn't like yelling up the stairs. Apparently, an easier solution for walking up them and addressing whomever she needed was to stand at the bottom and give a couple of sharp whistles. We would approach the top of the stairs, and from the bottom, she'd tell us what she needed. Time for dinner? Whistle. I want you to come downstairs? Whistle. When I whistled for my, at the time, husband, he got irritated and said he wasn't a dog. I thought about it and I was like, I guess you're right. I now feel like whistling is disrespectful, and I'd never do it. At the same time, I have no problem that this is how our house went. It was more peaceful than shouting, and less work than walking. Just one of those weird family quirks, I guess. Story 13. Changing clothes in the living room and terrace. BCS parents say, it's dirty if you are still wearing outside clothes while going in your bedroom. I just noticed this is weird when I was older and friends came by, and they were surprised when my dad casually stripped to his underwear on our terrace. Parents are still doing it, but not when a total stranger is around now. I talked about how it's weird. But they do it when they already know someone close enough, and I had to warn my BF about it before he came around. He's now getting used to it. Story 14. My family drives everywhere and doesn't stop. Sleep in shifts in the car, share the responsibilities of driving. There are a total of 3 stops in a day. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. If you gotta go to the bathroom, you wait until the next stop. There are no other stops. And I legitimately mean that there is no, but what about, no. I was raised that you gotta figure out a way to hold it. 24-hour trips from Minnesota to Texas. 3 stops, maybe 4. 12-hour trip from Minnesota to Indiana. 1 stop. 26 hours to Washington State. 3 stops, maybe 4. That was my standard growing up, and I was used to it. Getting to college and riding with other people was so eye-opening and honestly very painful because driving a 3-hour trip and having to stop at all was, and still is, absurd to me. And I have friends that would legitimately stop 2 or 3 times for breaks. I've relaxed a bit with marriage and kids of my own, but most of the time I try to cut down on stops as much as possible. Story 15. In the summer, my dad used to get us up, myself and 3 siblings, at 9 a.m., give us breakfast and then boot us out of the house and lock the back front doors from the inside. We weren't allowed back inside until the streetlights came on, unless it was only using the washroom or getting a drink. Our ages were 10, 9, 7, and 4. The first time he did it, because he told me you're old enough to look after them on your own now, and you're not sitting around the house on your fat asses all day. My stepmom never questioned it because she figured that he was just getting us to play outside for a few hours. Once my second youngest sister, the 7-year-old, got heat stroke, and my dad was pissed that he had to drive us all to the hospital and waste time. Realized when I was 14 to 15 that he just wanted us out of the house so he could drink and watch NHL. We never really questioned why he was kicking us out because the other kids that lived on the street were also outside around the same time as us. Once we were invited into my brother's friend's house to play his Wii, and we were like, huh? You're allowed to go inside and play the Wii. What the freak? For those mentioning the Wii, this was around 2006. For those concerned with how we ate, yes, we did eat during the day. My dad sometimes would put fruit or something out on the back deck table, but usually we'd get food from friends' parents. We'd find cash lying around and save up enough to get candy from the dollar store. There was a farm near the house, and we'd eat the chives that grew naturally on the side of the property. Steel. Crab apples. Tiny green apples that are super sour from their trees. Alright folks, that's a wrap. If you like more of this, please hit a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can also share your thoughts in the comment below. I'll see you in the next video.